Hello, welcome to Hanratty on Karate. I'm in California this week, having a little bit of a vacation, golfing, get some sunshine. Thought I'd come down to Riverside and visit a few old friends. I did a lot of teaching down here in the 90s and early 2000s, and looking at my old friend Kevin Warner. Kevin's a 7th Dan, ex-Ray Dalkey student and Ed Otis student. Ran the UCR club, Riverside, for a while. And we're just going to have Kevin give a few of his experiences and a few little questions. So, how are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great.
Good. All right. So, I guess, first thing I normally ask people I'm going a little interview or podcast with is, how did you start your training? Same as always.
So I started karate in 1979. I was 9 years old, and the reason why I started was I got hurt in school during recess, which would be PE. Had my hip dislocated.
Wow.
And required surgery, and the doctor suggested that I do some type of activity that would help with blood flow, flexibility, and strength. My dad had done Golden Gloves boxing and taekwondo in his youth and had trained, and a friend of mine was actually training at Mr. Dalkey's club at the time. So when I was able to walk again, my dad signed me up. I started in March of 79 with Sensei Otis, who at that time was a 24-year-old third Dan and was Mr. Dalkey's assistant.
That's Ray Dalkey, right? The member of the U.S. national team.
Yes.
With Nishiyama.
Yeah. So Mr. Dalkey had the club in town. He was famous as one of Sensei Nishiyama's senior American students, was a former national champ. Also ran the UCR program, which was the college here in town. We had a physical education course there where you could get credits in PE towards your graduation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that should be mandatory in most universities. I did try to get it introduced into the University of Calgary using Ray's model, but unfortunately they didn't have anything in the budget that would account for it. So, you competed a lot with Ray's club, right?
Yes. So, I started competing probably when I was about 6Q, green belt.
Yep.
And fell in love with it. Very first tournament, came in 3rd place in kata. And back then, the divisions were a little bit different. So I was 6Q, and most of the kids I was competing against were brown belt or junior black belt. So
right.
Very first tournament, came in 3rd place in kata, fell in love with it, and just took off from there. Was pretty fortunate back then. We traveled all over the West Coast competing. I did very well as a youth, mainly in kata. It took me a while to figure out kumite. About 16 years old, it finally clicked. But up until then, it was more kata.
Right. Now, I remember you from a few camps that I took down here with Ray at Idlewild and different other places. And I seem to remember you competing in the Nakayama Club with Chris Dalkey. Is that right?
No, I didn't get to do that one.
Oh, okay. I thought you did.
Yeah, for whatever reason, Sensei made me stay at the dojo and teach. Chris got to go to that. What I did get to do, though, was that first year you brought Mr. Otis up, and Chris and I don't remember the other gentleman's name, but we came up to Simon Fraser.
Oh, that was a university, Simon Fraser University in Vancouver.
So that was the first...
we held a tournament there, I believe.
And that first year was it was a small venue. We did round robin kumite, so everyone fought everyone in 2 different rings, and then the champion of each ring got to fight each other. That
was Andy Holmes's club.
Yeah.
And Andy ran that for a while, and then he let it go, and I think Peter Stoddart took it over. And Peter switched from Shotokan to Wadaru, along with Norma Foster, names from the past for people who know them. So we used to come down here for Ray Dalkey's tournament quite a bit. I remember bringing teams down to fight at UCR, and we always did quite well. What do you remember about those tournaments? It seemed to me that they were pretty tough.
So back then, that UCR tournament had a reputation in the region for being extremely tough. Contact was, there was contact. It was allowed. It was really based off the old Ippon Shobu system. It had to be a strong technique to get a point. What was interesting is when you guys started coming down is I feel our level really went up because of the exchange we were doing. I'm not sure if you remember, but we were coming up to your camp. You guys would host on Victoria. I think it was the island?
It was on the naval base
the
on
naval base.
Victoria Island. It was Squimo. Yeah,
So,
it was a really good camp. Yeah.
So I would come up with Sensei to that, and then you guys would come down here, and then we would go back up for your tournament, and you guys would come down here.
Yep.
So we were getting to see you at least 2 times a year, and I think that really helped. I remember coming up, and you invited me to do the team training with the Canadian team, so
right.
That was good, and I think that really helped. I always felt super close to you and the Canadian team, especially when we were traveling abroad when we started doing Wuska.
Right. I know you came up for the first Wuska in '91, and I think you guys, I'm not sure if you beat us to one of the medals or not. I know we got a bronze.
We got silver in Team Kata.
Right, we got bronze.
It was myself, a gentleman named Grant Campbell, who's in New York, who was a Kubota guy, and Hiroshi Allen.
I remember Hiroshi, and Bob Allen's son, right?
Yes, and then we had Townsend Carr. She took silver, I think, in kata.
Yep, she did, yeah.
Behind a lady from Sweden.
Yeah, I remember that lady, yeah.
The most interesting point of that for me is I was 21 at the time, and Sensei had only put me in the kata division, and I got to the second round, and in the second round, unfortunately, I drew Paul Key, who had just beat Frank in the ESCA tournament.
Right.
What was memorable for me about that gave me confidence was the ref called Gion. We did Gion, and being unknown, I got a flag. So one of the European refs preferred my Gion, which really gave me a lot of confidence, to be honest, to go back and train harder and then go from there.
That's great. Yeah, I remember that tournament very well. I mean, it was one of the biggest Wuska tournaments, being the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the biggest one that we put on, and I worked for months on that, and Ray helped me, and then...
and that actually got us invited to, when the KUGB used to do their Goodwill match at their Nationals, we got invited in '92 to go to, I think it was Birmingham is where they were holding it.
Yeah, in the Birmingham, the national...
and so we were invited as a team to go, and it was 2 rounds. It was 5-man matches, 2 rounds, and again, great experience. I unfortunately drew George Best twice. So that didn't go so well. That was a man against a boy.
Georgie was pretty explosive.
So I was 22 at the time, so George was probably about 32.
Just about in his prime.
And that's the year, that was Frank's retirement year.
Yeah.
Watch Frank beat George in the finals with spinning hook kick to the head. Yeah, so another experience that helped my growth. Yeah,
we were invited to that one as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it that year. I had stuff going on. We just won the Nationals in Canada, actually, our team, and I wanted to take them there, but we'd gone all the way across the country, and being honest, traveling from Calgary to Toronto is as expensive as going from Calgary to the UK. It's just horrendous, and we ran out of funds that year, but I'm glad you guys made it.
Oh, yeah. Going back to the experience with the Canadian team and you guys coming down here to the Riverside tournament, if you remember, we had the cup and the crying towel.
Right.
And we would exchange that every year. And it was always good-natured. It was always hard. But the best thing I thought about that was just how well we all got along after it was over.
Oh, yeah. And it was great to hit the beach with our crying towel or our cup, whichever we got,
And then, and the team would sometimes come down for holiday. A group of the guys would come down. They would end up staying at my mother's house on the floor. So my mother would adopt all the karate people. And so they would come down and they would knock on the door, and I'd open the door, and there's all these Canadians. So they would crash on my mother's door before they would go off on their adventures in the West Coast. Yeah,
we had some fun there. I remember the very last tournament I personally entered was, I think, '95. I was 50, and he put me in the Masters.
Yes.
And 12 fights in a row.
Yeah.
I was knackered. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But I did get the overall championship. I got second in kata and
Right.
first in kumite. But I don't know what I was doing towards the end of that fight, I can tell you.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. And you could not buy a point.
No.
You had to basically knock the guy out before you got a
Pretty much.
Rosari off Doki there.
Yeah, that tournament really was very tough. In later years, he tried to, as WKF was becoming more popular,
Yeah.
and the Sambo and Shobu was also super popular with the AAU.
Yes.
He was trying to pull away and do more Ippon Shobu, but it just wasn't working. So the tournament got smaller and smaller in later years.
I know we got the collegiate trophy one year,
Right.
beating Chuck Coburn's team from Arizona,
Yes.
was it?
Yeah, they're from Arizona.
Yeah, really nice guy, Chuck. And there were some personalities around those tournaments. I remember sitting down and talking for a couple of hours with a guy called Dan Ivan.
Uh-huh.
Holy cow, that guy had a background.
Yeah,
Did he ever have some knowledge? You know?
He was CID, which was American, police.
Intelligence,
Yeah, in Japan, and he actually trained with Ushiba and all those guys. He trained at the Kodokan, he trained at JK, and he actually was the man responsible for bringing the Shitoru Sensei Fumio Demura to the United States.
Good. Yeah, I spoke with him, and he told me he used to visit all the dojos, and he spoke fluent Japanese, but he never let any of them know because he was in the intelligence.
Yeah.
He wanted to just, listen to what was going on. But what an interesting character. And when I met him, as I say, about 95, he was living out in the desert, kind of turned into an old hippie. But
that tends to happen to some of the senseis for some reason.
Yeah, it must be PTSD or something.
Could be.
Yeah, but going on from there, I know we got together a lot, especially at some of the training camps that we did down here in the early days with Ray at Idlewild.
Idlewild at the science camp.
Oh,
yeah,
wow!
When it was super hot and
super high, it was like 6,000 or 7,000 feet up.
Yeah, and some of those camps, I look back, and some of those camps were just ridiculously brutal.
Yeah,
really, really hard. We trained all day. I remember when you introduced it in our club first, and then when you taught at camp that year, I think we were getting ready for, it was 95, it was England. We were getting ready for Wisconsin, England. So you were teaching at camp, and we had the camp doing the 5 drill.
Oh, God, yeah.
So we had that lineup where we yell 5, and you don't know what's coming, and I get 5 different attacks. And there were people dropping left and right because it was coming so fast and so furious. It was fun, and it was fun to survive it.
It was great to survive it, and it really got people who were doing kumite out of that passive aggressor mode where they just kind of pretend that they're attacking, expecting to be blocked.
Yeah, you didn't.
No, this was like, you knock him out, you get a prize.
And we were definitely trying to knock each other out. I think mainly because if we were knocked out, we didn't have to keep going.
Yeah.
We could get a break, but unfortunately, it never happened.
Yeah, there were different camps then, for sure. Hey, I'm going to stop there, and maybe we'll come back and we'll discuss some further camps that we've been through. So we'll just leave that alone. So, as always, if you have any questions or comments, always welcome. Just message me or leave them on the website, and I'll get them anyway. Okay, thanks.